so Catalyte has grown incredibly fast. We're about, today, in the last year, our company is about 4 times the size it was a year ago. We've grown from about 150 developers last year to a bit over 600 now as we speak. It's a company that's gone from sort of a $15 and $20 million revenue run rate to a company that's, at $100 million sort of run rate now. It's a company that we've raised we've raised a $27 million Series A, last year to fund a lot of this growth. But a lot of this growth, frankly, is just coming from our clients. Right? It's coming from the need in this country for great software developers. We are facing, we're in an industry now where the Department of Labor has estimated that by 2025 there's going to be about 1 million developers that are going to be needed in this market that we don't have today. So, we're really fulfilling that demand, right? We're really be able to actually produce the developers, the talent that we need to be able to build the digital products for this new economy. What's broken about the hiring process today, right, is that it's very focused on pedigree. Right? So it's focused on where did you go to school? Where did you work before? Who are your connections, right? What's your network look like? And one of the things that's really core to the tenet of the company is we've proven, if you go back even to the founder Michael Rosenbaum's original research almost 2 decades ago, is to prove that actual traditional ways of hiring, looking at resumes, doing job interviews, has actual very little statistical correlation to successful outcomes on jobs. In fact, what are those actually? What are you actually doing when you're actually looking at a resume and you're interviewing somebody? It's actually reinforcing social biases that you may have. And these are implicit biases. You're not explicit. You look at a person's resume, and a person who went to a fancy school, goes to the top of that stack, versus a person who didn't probably gets sort of lower on that stack. And so what you end up with in typically those kind of hiring situations is that and there's been many, many studies that have proven this, is that you end up with a workforce that looks like the people who are making the hiring decisions, right? So people end up hiring people like themselves. And a lot of companies mask that in culture or mask that in things like we want to only hire the very best at the top of the top of the industry. Reality, what's happening is that people are hiring people who are like themselves, which is really, frankly, the problem, because that actually has very little bearing on actual successful outcomes in jobs and in professions. So the Catalyte talent platform, really what we're about is finding people able to create better outcomes in these jobs. In fact, one of the things that's been quite amazing about sort of what we've shown is that we've proven, for example, that Catalyte teams of developers who come from unconventional backgrounds. The majority of them never studied engineering or computer science. A third of them never went to a 4-year university, right? A third of them didn't even go to college, right? So, but we want to prove that these teams of developers are actually outperforming traditional development teams 3 to 1, right, from a productivity standpoint. Our clients have shown that on average our teams have produced 3 times the productivity of traditional software development teams. Our teams have been 30% faster in terms of on velocities and sprints, so they're able to develop products and applications faster than traditional teams. Higher quality, lower defect rates, faster ramp-up times. I mean, across the board, the performance has been astounding. And I think it's because we're selecting people that have an ability that naturally correlates with successful outcomes as software developers. Right? So we're finding people who have this ability. At the same time, we're also giving them the opportunity to be trained in a different way. Right? I think one of the other things that's actually quite broken about how we think about talent in sort of modern professions is that we don't really do very much upskilling or training or development. When I think about going back to my earliest parts of my career, most of the skills and abilities I had needed for my job were trained. I didn't learn them in college. Even if I went to a finance school, the reality is I learned more on my first week on the job than I did in 4 years of university, specific for that job. And I think that's something that also does not happen very much today anymore, is that it's very rare for us to be able to hire entry-level people and to be able to move them in a predictable way up a career ladder, up a skill ladder. I mean, it's even more pronounced in engineering. So even the greatest technology companies in the world are pretty lousy at taking a entry-level software developer and be able to move them up in a predictable way in a career path. And that's something that we do here, right? Is the fact that we can take a person who has ability, we train them as a cohort, as a team, which is also an important part, because the way we also think about training in the society is that we often think about training as an individual. How do I take a person and make them a coder, make them a programmer? We don't really look at it that way, right? We think about it as, how do we actually get a developer? How do we get a person to become a developer and to be able to actually have them work as a collaborative team from the get-go? So the way we train people and upskill people is very different from how most organizations do it. We train them as a team. They need to solve problems as a team from day one throughout that process. And even after they've actually come through the training program, they're now associates and employees in the company. They're expected to continue to move up that career ladder. Right? So we have this idea of, you can choose your own adventure here, right? So there are a number of different career paths that we give people, and we make that so it's predictable and it's something that a person is absolutely within their control and within sort of their ability to actually move up that ladder and advance their career very rapidly. And then I think the last thing that we do that's also quite unique and quite different here is that is really, frankly, the way that we think about employee development, right? So not only can they advance their career here, but we also look at here as a place where people can really jam in lots of different types of engagements and projects. So we give our employees the ability to move across different types of projects and different types of clients. And quite frankly, at a certain point in their career, if they choose that they want to leave, right? If they want to go to another company or work somewhere else, we're happy to, we don't treat them like ex-employees, we treat them as alumni, right? We celebrate when people actually graduate and go somewhere else. And that's one of the reasons we have this incredible statistic here, which is 1 out of 4 of the people who leave Catalyte come back, and that's something I've never seen in any other company, right? You can go to the most name brand companies in this country, and very seldom do people leave those companies and go back. That's something that happens quite a bit here. And that says something about the culture, right? The culture of having this growth mindset, this culture where we help each other become successful. And that is a big part of the Catalyte story. One of the things I think is really one of the key assets here is the fact that our employees, our people, really feel that they're supported, that they're, it's a very helpful and open environment where people are actively trying to make each other successful, and that we all have a vested interest in making sure that they can advance and get stronger and get better in their career.